medium that a Nick Gets Better story comes in, we're happy to create resources to kind of take it to that next level or get it into the hands of the person who really needs it and who wants to make a difference in the lives of the youth that they work with. Does that answer that question?
It definitely does. I appreciate that. Yep. Tim M, same question to your invitation. Tim M, you there?
Yes, I'm here. I heard another voice.
Yes.
Yeah, with regard to my call to action, I was a 16-year-old Black queer kid in Southwest Arkansas when I was in high school, and searching so often for some representation of who I got to be. I tell people all the time, I mentioned this today, I said, had I even just known that James Baldwin was a gay man, as someone who was already reading his material, right? Like the suicidal ideation and contemplation that I was going through when everything else in my life seemed to be going well. I had great grades, I was an athlete, like I had a beautiful girlfriend, but like there was just this sadness and this depth of sadness that I think Barry Jenkins captures that really well in Chiron. That there's just this depth of sadness that he can't escape. And the power of an educator who, even if they weren't themselves LGBTQ, and right, understanding the laws and the policies, sometimes the best that a person can be is an ally. When I taught in Texas, I was told, you can't come out here or else you can't keep this job. But I was still an ally, right? And my thing about allies, coming from a philosophy background, it's kind of analogous to that if a tree falls in the woods and no one hears it, does it make sound? Like I could not be a silent ally. Like if you are aspiring, this is framing I like to use, if you're an aspiring ally, then how are you showing up actively in ways that kids and people know that you are actually supportive of who they are? I think a lot of people read ally to be, I'm not harming LGBTQ kids, and that's enough. But
that's the part where I try and use the word accomplice, right? Because I think sometimes people think you can be an ally if you watch Will and Grace, if you know how to vote, if you could use some of the lingo, maybe go to an HRC gala, then you're right. You got the bumper sticker, you're an ally, you can pat yourself on the back. But the question is really like, what are you doing to leverage your privilege to disrupt the trauma that kids might otherwise experience, or how do you otherwise have skin in the game?
Yeah, and that's real, because I mean the reality is that as straight people with straight privilege, you have a lot more ability, right, to speak up and speak out in ways that some people are really vulnerable to around doing. So I think that would be it. I do know also connected to that as a teacher in a few different spaces, who was sometimes the only out teacher in the spaces where I was, I knew the tremendous impact that had on kids. And just as one of the biggest moments of gratitude I remember was getting a wedding invitation from a student I hadn't taught. So I saw the letter and I was like, I don't even know this name. And you remember your kids' names. And in the letter, he acknowledged, you didn't teach me, but I saw you and I saw how all the kids responded to you.
You were my assigned classroom teacher, but you taught me.
But I was in the hall.
Exactly.
And he was like, and you were so popular and the kids liked you. And he's like, I'm going to get through this battle. And he sent me a wedding invitation to him and his partner's wedding. And that was just like, wow, like this is somebody I didn't even teach. But that's the kind of impact that we can have in schools and in classrooms.
What resources exist, Tim M, for educators formally or for caring and concerned adults who want to do better and show up in that way?
I would say, I point them to a number of organizations, some of whom that we partner with. I certainly think that, you have your GLSEN, you have HRC has a Welcoming Schools curriculum, but that's more student focused. I think in terms of educators that are looking for networks, one of the things that I've worked to do, and Justin's on our National PRISM board, is we've leveraged this network of Teach for America alumni and other teachers, but me not being a Teach for America alumni myself, I was like, well, how do other people play a role that are not connected to that network? And so our PRISM networks, which you'll hear people talk about, are really open. We have Black mothers on PRISM boards in North Carolina. We have Black students on PRISM boards in Minnesota. So the idea is like, how do we do this work as a community? Wherever you live, I would inquire about whether or not there is one of these networks. You do not have to be a part of Teach for America.
How does one inquire? Is it a Facebook search?
Yes, a Facebook search. If you look up Teach for America Prism, you can find that page. It's a community of thousands of people that are asking questions. Some people will throw out, well, this happened in my classroom today. What should I do? And they can get that support and hear back from other people.
Yeah, I appreciate the acknowledgement that none of us have all of the answers. It's impossible to, and a lot of this is us figuring out in real time. I saw earlier, I thought, Justin, that you wanted to interject or jump in on something.
I was just thinking, I love the conversation about allies and about you have to do something. You don't just get to be an ally just because you think you are one. You have to go out and actually make an effort to do something meaningful. And that's like with this film, how many people who are not Black or who are not queer went and saw this film and they said, that's a great story, and then never spoke about it again, right? Sure, their dollars contributed to the film getting to a bigger audience. Their dollars contributed to getting an Oscar. But if they're a real ally, then they would say, you know what, like my mom has to see this film. I'm going to sit her down. We're going to watch it together and we're going to talk about this because this is something that she needs to understand, or these other people in my life need to understand. And that's, I think, and that's like the bare minimum, right? Is sharing our stories with communities far and wide. But that would be like my hope as well, is that if people really want to be allies, that they take these stories and they sit down with people who have not been exposed to them and say, you know what, you're gonna watch this because it's important.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I'll take you up on that. I will commit to having a conversation with my wife after she watches a film. Timon, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I love how this conversation has come back to your original question of like what has made some people so reticent to see it. So I've talked to Black educators who would definitely say they are friends of mine, fans of mine, whatever. And I'll ask them, like, have you seen Moonlight? And they will, like, it's surprising to me the number of people of educated, would call themselves an ally, whatever, have not seen this film. Yeah. And I think that there's the elephant in the room that we have to name, that heterosexism, homophobia, and just a discomfort that some people have with the possibility of that love. You talk about the scene. I think there was a conversation earlier this week about the final scene in the film, or maybe that was a question.
We're gonna go there next.
Okay, we're gonna go there next. So I'm gonna let you go there next, because what I have to, maybe this is just a good bridge to get there, because
before you do that, I want to highlight one more resource while people are still taking notes.
Yes, please.
And I want to acknowledge while we're talking about Chiron, who was centered as the protagonist in the film, there's another report that I want to encourage everyone to read called Ring the Alarm. It was produced in partnership with the Congressional Black Caucus and submitted to Congress last year to acknowledge that the suicide rate for Black young men around the age of Little in the film have increased more than 74% over the last 2 decades. That's alarming because the suicide rates for, as Tim mentioned earlier, Black kids, Black heterosexual kids, presumably, as well as LGBTQ kids, because we don't have data that allows us to track both, nor safety mechanisms that would allow for those reportings to be accurate. But the point is that we know that young people are struggling with suicide at extreme rates and often don't have the support they need, especially in schools. So I encourage everyone to download that report, think a lot about the recommendations that are included. Some of the risk factors that we know that exist are students being isolated, socially isolated, spending more time with computers on social media. And those are things that can just be signs of a global pandemic at present. So I want everybody to be especially mindful of making sure our babies are well. Before I pose a question that was submitted in advance of our discussion, I want to see if there's anyone, I pose this in the chat, but if there's anyone who has another question who's joined us, or who wants to join in the conversation and offer their perspective. While we wait to see if that comes in, the question is this. The last scene in the film, this beautiful film by Barry Jenkins, this award-winning, Oscar award-winning film, shows 2 gentlemen comforting each other. I love that choice of words. Do they continue a relationship or leave it as is? Tim M, what's your response to that?
Yeah, this scene, that scene is the scene that sometimes determines the people who love the film from those that don't particularly care
Mhm.
for it. Um, I love that it ended with the question mark. I love the vast possibility of what that represented. Um, I also love that it didn't go further than comfort in a sense. I recall my sister saying to me that it forced her to think about intimacy between gay
Mm.
men in a
Mhm.
way that she had previously maybe thought about sex as the defining thing between men. Um, and I think, as someone who is often, as black queer men, we are hypersexualized, right? And so the ability to see that intimacy and that care was so critical for me. Um, I think I've had a number of different endings, which is what I loved about the movie. Like, I imagine Black and Kevin adopting kids and having a gay wedding. I've imagined them just kind of staying in this space of, they connect every once in a while, but it doesn't go that serious. I've imagined them trying and not working out. So I just think that's the beauty of it, because in so many ways, each of those outcomes reflects my life and my struggles and aspirations in loving. And all of them are beautiful endings that are just different.
Yeah. Justin, what about you? How does it end for you?
Well, hey, I am not gonna lie. Did I, when I was sitting there at the end of the movie, want to see these two absolutely beautiful men kiss or touch each other more than what they did?
Yes.
100%. Yes, the answer is yes, I did. Um, but did I appreciate that like that simple sign of comfort and love that was there? Yes. Um, when thinking about what happens after that scene, if the movie were to continue, if there was some sort of sequel, I don't know if they would be together. I have this vision in my head that they absolutely would continue as best friends, as brothers, because that so often does happen actually in the gay community. That many times people in our lives that start off as lovers end up just being the best friends of our lives. And I just think about where they're at in their life, right? Like Kevin has a child. Kevin has been through it. Kevin is kind of he's taking care of that diner, and he's obviously a skilled cook, and he's got these dreams and these aspirations. And Chiron, who at that time is goes by the label Black, he he's not quite there, right? Like he shows up trying to show off like his peacock feathers. Like he shows up and tries to impress them with his car and with his grill and with his
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And I think they're just at different stages of their life. And honestly, I don't we don't know because it kind of jumps so far forward in time. But I always got the sense that for Chiron, Kevin might have been the only man he had ever been intimate with in his life. And I just don't know if Kevin would have been able or willing to take that on to continue or to build a relationship with beyond friendship. But I mean, like I said, would I have loved, do I like to imagine that there could be some greater intimacy there between them? Yes. But I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's right. Three things for me, which is I agree with everything that both of you said. I also acknowledge that Kevin was presented as the more experienced of the two. And some of it definitely was the traditional posturing that we have come to expect of boys, right? Like him talking about when he was first going to detention, Chiron imagining him with the girl, and him definitely leading in the intimacy, right? But I also wondered if he had other intimate relationships. It was compounded for me because we understood that he went to prison, which is where he learned how to cook. And so I also had questions about how each of them might have explained their relationships with each other to other people. Um, I also, while watching the film, reflected upon my own struggle with, for years, feeling that what I could not wrap my head around was physical intimacy with another man. But what I really, really wanted to explore was this idea of emotional intimacy. And to Tim's point, because that only existed for me in the pages of Giovanni's room, or in books that I would find by Elin Harris. In hindsight, I should have known something was up when my mother gave me those books, right? But I really wanted to know that the intimate part of it and the physical part was actually something that I knew that I wasn't interested in, or would not come easy for me. And so I love the way that was troubled and presented in the film, right? And then the last thing, to your point about relationships, Justin, is I reflect upon the love that I have found, right, for myself, right, coming into myself fully, and in romantic relationships with other people. And the thing that I hold on to most are those moments where I felt most comfortable in specific instances, and cherish those even if the relationship doesn't endure in the way that one would otherwise hope for, right? So I appreciate that Barry was able to capture those. And often, I think in all of his films, allows us to appreciate that things don't have a bow tied ending, right? That things are often questioned, are scattered ellipses that are to be continued. I'm pausing just to check. I don't see anything else in the chat. And we're nearing our time at the top of the hour. I will end where I began and say thank you to each of you.
David, there's a question that just came in.
Oh, how about that? What is your opinion of the diner scene? I thought that the diner scene was one of the most romantic courtship scenes in the film. Yes, Bill, we talked about it. We could talk about it again.
I have a slightly different opinion. So this is one of those moments that I wanted to see something slightly different. Because we all know the moment when Kevin calls Black and wrecks his entire world. Like, you know, I mean, can you imagine you have gone to jail because of a situation that happened when your first love decided to please his boys over, like there was a part, there was also a rewriting of that scene where I imagine Kevin and Black just starting to fight everybody else because they were going to stand
together,
love for each other. That's a different movie,
right? We need to write that one. Yeah.
But there was a moment for me where when Black asked Kevin, "Why'd you call me?" I wanted a little more like anger, or just like I just wanted a little bit more.
Where do you want that to have come from? Because outside of the scene when he walked into school, being real clear he was going to do something, there was not that. And maybe that's it. It was fleeting.
Right.
Like, where would that otherwise come from? Even with his mom, right? Like even in the moment where
he wasn't that kind of person.
He's not that dude. He was never that dude.
And I wanted him to be that too.
But so many of us want to be that dude, right? But that's also why I appreciated, to Justin's earlier point, why Teresa allowed him to be gentle, but also said to him, "You're gonna put your head up in this house and you're gonna answer, right? You're gonna engage in conversation." And and it was never a forcing him to be a kind of boy that he wasn't, but also a recognition that there were things that he needed to do when he grew to become a man.
Right. And I think for me it was just he existed on this binary of being Juan. And I guess he did truly become Juan because Juan has this softness and this tenderness and this gentleness as well, but then shows up in a different way publicly. And I feel like that binary sometimes is where a lot of Black men live. And if you're not hard enough, right, you're vulnerable, and if you're too aggressive, right, we know what happens when Black men are assertive. They can get killed. We can get killed. So I think it's just, and again, that wasn't the movie for it, but there was a part of me that just wanted him to show a little anger, or maybe just emotion. And that wasn't him. You're right. So I've never talked about this, so you convinced me that it happened the right way.
No, I think all that's fair, right? Yeah, go for it, Justin.
Well, like Barry Jenkins films are never easy. And I think that Chiron responding to pain and trauma with additional pain and anger, it would have been an easy character to write. And I think Chiron is so much more complex than that, right? Like one of my favorite scenes, although it's one of the most heartbreaking scenes, is the scene right before he asks Lon, what does the F word mean? And the reason he asks that is because if you remember, his mother screams it down the hall at him, though you never hear her actually say it because they block out the sound. But you see her in the amazing light in the hallway, just beautifully shot, but incredibly painful moment, is that he's been on the receiving end of so much anger and so much violence. And when he has lashed out, it ended him in juvenile detention. He hustles drugs on the streets. So I think he knows violence. He knows what anger is. And even though I think he's in pain from what Kevin did to him, I think he's probably just too tired to keep perpetuating that same anger and violence, at least to someone he loves as much as he does Kevin. And so I agree with you that why, like, I thought that is like, why is there not more anger in that statement? But when I watch it again, and every time I watch it, I read a different emotion. And the one that really stands out is pain. He was hurt. And
Yeah.
he wanted to give Kevin the opportunity to explain in words why he did what he did.
Yeah, and to see how he.
I could talk about this movie forever.
Yeah, no. I think he often, this is right, one of the wonders of it. For me, he often gives people opportunities to just show up, right? One of the things that I appreciated most about Juan and Teresa in that regard. I also, everything of what we're all saying about the scene and its connections with Standing, the way that Barry Jenkins used film and silence and space to go from the table to painting over to the over and then up to the jukebox, right? So that we then watch Kevin as he picks the song, and then we watch him turn around, right? Like, there are all these just moments where I found myself like holding my breath and then like taking really, really deep breaths and then like exhaling. That for me is just about the reality that like so much of this is about a process of just trying to figure shit out. And even when you have the language or the words, you might not be able to communicate that which you actually feel. And ultimately, for the benefit of those who can't read the chat, I agree with your point, Tim, about Little showing tremendous restraint, and all of us being should be concerned about and aware of what that kind of restraint does, or the demonstration of resilience and grit, or what's required for extremely effeminate or hypermasculine queer kids to show up. Right? All of that takes a toll on people in ways that we have to be especially mindful of. And I hope that that's not lost on anyone.
Yeah, David, I think I'm glad you said that. It's something I'm dealing with now. And I think we sometimes celebrate, and I think it can be dangerous to celebrate the grit, the resilience, the strength. And all of these are things that like queer Black boys, develop by necessity, but almost to the point of like not being able to imagine a different way of being where you don't have to step out of that. So I think that's important,
Yeah, no, I think that's right. Well, let's all hold what's possible at the heart. Philip says, thanks for the live discussion. Moonlight touched my soul. It touched our souls as well, which is why we are here. So if you all heard me say nothing in the course of our conversation, Tim and Justin heard me when I say thank you, both for the gift of your time tonight in recording this conversation, but also for the labor that you have invested to date, and that you will continue to invest to ensure that all of our babies are able to thrive and be well. I will allow each of you to have the final word before we say goodbye to those who have joined us and conclude this video.
Yeah, I'll just say thank you to both. David, you've been a warrior out there doing work before National Black Justice Coalition for All Kids, raising awareness about mental health and the importance of that, I think, in our communities is so critical. So thank you for your work. And then Justin, so much love for you and the work that you continue to do and how you continue to show up as an accomplice in this work. And we are just three people. And I think the connections that we built in the process of even coming together to do this, That's what we need to see more of. Who can you work with? What can you create with somebody else that you can't do by yourself? And I think this conversation is a perfect demonstration of the power of that.
Yep. Justin, last word goes to you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so grateful. You didn't have to make this space for me. You didn't have to allow me to participate in this conversation, and you did. And I'm really appreciative of that. And I think we talked a lot about allies, like non-queer allies needing to step up, but there are a lot of queer people, white queer people, who think that being queer negates their whiteness or negates other privileges that they have in this world. And it's not true. We all need to do better, and as allies. And I am so grateful to you, Tamin, for constantly pushing me to step up and do better as an ally of queer people of color specifically. And I'm really grateful for that. And David, for just doing this, for being such a great partner in the work. It means so much. And I wish you both the best of luck and all the success and everything that you continue to do.
You both make it easy. Watch the film, download the Educators Resource Toolkit, and have a conversation with someone you know and love, or maybe who you don't know and love. Just talk to them about. Thank you all. Let us know how we can be helpful.
Yes, and David, this will be available for viewing, right, on YouTube?
Yeah, it'll be available on YouTube at all of our platforms. I will share it so that everyone can post it and disseminate it widely.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.